Well, thank you everyone for being here, and I guess after lunch. So I know this is always kind of one of the toughest panels. So I'm Rob Haddock. I'm a general partner at the fund Dragonfly. We're really here to talk about high performance L1s and kind of Omnichain Infra. I'll start by just letting each of our panelists introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Keone Han, co-founder of Monad and GM at the Monad Foundation. Monad is a new EVM layer 1 that is bringing really high performance to the EVM by rebuilding a lot of component architectures within the EVM.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dane. I'm a solutions architect lead at Layer 0. We're a Omnichain messaging protocol. So basically, we just connect a bunch of blockchains like Monad, Aptos, etc., together with a cross-chain messaging system. So that allows obviously movement of assets as a very big use case, but basically anything that is involved with data passing.
Hey everyone, my name is John, co-founder of Supra, and Supra is a high-throughput layer 1. We went to market in November being the third move-based layer 1 and on mainnet, and we shortly have EVM on testnet coming up. So we're a multi-VM high-throughput layer 1, and really what makes us stand out is we vertically integrate Oracle services on the L1 itself. So this is Oracle cross-chain communication, as well as automation.
David Walensky from Aptos, if you're not head of engineering, of course. And so at Aptos, we're building a high-performance, ultra-low latency, general-purpose layer 1 technology. One of the things that's really cool in that space is that we're really trying to push the boundaries both in terms of throughput and latency. So when you can hit up those 20,000 transactions per second while still maintaining sub-second latency. And we're also transitioning to our 2025 roadmap. We're focused on building out a global trading engine, which is a great topic when we talk about what it means in high-performance L1s and a lot of the components that are going to be coming into place that will move us away from that general-purpose construct into new and exciting domains.
Great, thank you, everyone. So there's a really good mix of kind of different builders on here, from layer 0, which I know you guys call yourself an L0, to a couple L1s. Today dApps are just becoming, or there's an expectation that they're going to be more multi-chain, they're going to be more composable. How do you guys think about building for a composable world versus maybe what might be your incentive, which is to keep them on your chain only? I don't know, Keone, if you want to start.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the focus has to be on users. There's been some really fun discussions in the Ethereum landscape recently where, there was this big debate about EOF, Ethereum object format, and it's like this big monolithic change to the EVM. And the core developers had a huge dispute over whether to include this in Ethereum or not. And I think the debate really came down to a debate between the core developers really want this feature, it's really cool, but then on the other side, do the users actually care about this? Do they want this? And the user side won, and more generally, there's this new energy, I think, in the Ethereum ecosystem toward really building for what users want, optimizing for really simple user interfaces, reducing extra clicks, account abstraction, more integrated into the overall user experience. And I think that extends as well to interoperability. Users they want all of the details of blockchain interaction to be abstracted away. So I think from that perspective, it's clear that there's this direction. And as you said, although there's a inherent conflict between building an ecosystem and trying to grow that ecosystem as much as possible and build a moat. At the end of the day, the power of blockchain, I think, is coming from using common standards, so really crystallizing around the EVM and letting down the moat, or reducing the moat, and just focusing on user acquisition and user growth of the crypto space more generally.
I mean, I think the recent shift, I'm a recovering ETH maxi, so the recent shift to being a lot more user focused is definitely welcome, and I think that's why Solana has honestly taken a lot of Ethereum's mind share, or whatever you want to call it, is because it's just better for users. I spent the last 3 years before Layer Zero at L2, and we were constantly in this kind of fight to keep people and developers on a single chain. And now being at Layer Zero, it's so nice for me because I'm not actually having this fight all the time. I think, we don't obviously interface with users as much, but from the developer perspective, at least, it seems like the developers want to not be, isolated in a single ecosystem. And obviously something like Layer Zero helps them to do that. The challenges there, I think, are like the latency involved, depending on the finality of the chain and things like that. Like sometimes it's maybe not the best experience, and if you're bridging tokens across and you need to swap them, like by the time you get the token over there, maybe the price differences actually kind of makes this not so great. If there's I don't know 4 minutes of latency or whatever it might be, but when you have chains with quick finality and obviously that experience gets a lot better. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's my take at least.
I think from a user perspective, let's just say like a year ago, if we're using a chain, we don't want to be hopping between this and that bridge all the time. As a user, we want to be in an ecosystem, and we love everyone to be in one ecosystem. Let's all be on Solana. Let's all be on on Ethereum. But I think if you think about it from an AI agent perspective, what is the AI? The AI agent might not really care if they're in this ecosystem or that. They're going to really want the ability to have the best yield or the best arbitrage opportunities. And they want to be able to maximize profit based on their risk profile. And therefore, I think we need to, already I believe most transactions on blockchain are done by bots and automation. And at Supra, we don't even think it's like a 10x or 100x. It's probably going to 1,000x as we have AI agents operate more efficiently across different chains. And so I think we need to open up to this era of not just focusing on the general user of you or me, but who is the main user of blockchain going forward? It's most likely AI agents. And therefore, if we speak our intent to these AI agents, hey, please optimize my yield or arbitrage and this and that, they're going to be operating in a multi-chain world. And so we need to have infrastructure that allows them to do that.
That's a little difficult to follow, but I'll give you my riff on it. I think it goes to partnering up with really great bridges and protocols. Like we've got a great partnership with Layer Zero, so you can use their bridging to seamlessly bring tokens over from any chain to Aptos and vice versa. And I think that's one of the cornerstones of a healthy ecosystem is being able to see both inflow and outflow that does chase after the highest yields, the best opportunities for the users and developers. We've also got great partnerships with Circle. So we have CCTP, so you can seamlessly bring in USDC without paying any fees on top of that really, really fast. Now, the question is, as a retail consumer, as a user coming into Web3, going through all the process, we're on an alt L1. We have our own wallet infrastructure, our own applications. It is very different than somebody going into an ETH space saying, I can use the same, protocol on all these different ETH chains. And in our case, what we have to do is figure out how do we take somebody that's in a MetaMask wallet or a Phantom wallet that's not necessarily compatible with Aptos and make it so that they can seamlessly start engaging in with high yield opportunities within the Aptos space. And so that, all these building blocks, we're taking that together, working with our ecosystem developers to make those developers more successful. But at the same time, because we brought that in, it allows for composability and compatibility to also take that outside of Aptos and to learn from what we're doing and apply it to their own environments.
So, Dave, I think you bring up an interesting point. There's a lot of conversation here around the user experience, but you're talking a little bit more around like, okay, well, how do we get the ecosystem developers in to want to build around this, and how do we incentivize them versus maybe what does Aptos themselves build? How do you think about like one, incentivizing the developers to build for a kind of cross chain or omni-chain world, and two, like what is the foundation or the dev co of your chain supposed to own versus trying to bring other people come and build there?
That's a very, very tricky question, as I'm sure anybody up here can allude to. I think at the basis of it, you really want the developers to focus on their business, their product, and not about the underlying chain. And the more the developer has to think about what they're building in the Web3 space, the nuances of that chain, the further away they are from the actual consumer, the retail user on top of their application. So at Aptos, what we're really doing is focus on building these layers up And so, when we talk about the global trading engine, it's really about identifying the gaps in what it means to be a general purpose L1 that's competing with the likes of Hyperliquid that's able to do phenomenal things within their very specialized domain. And so we're analyzing the difference between those two different approaches and really trying to make it so that anybody can bring in a really amazing trading platform into Aptos and take advantage of super low latency that wouldn't even be feasible on what Aptos is today.
Keone, you guys have a perspective over at Monad?
I think that if you look at existing financial markets, you basically see, uh, like different exchanges become dominant in a particular asset or even like category of assets, and it's really hard for when that crystallizes to break that. So just to give some examples, heating oil futures and gasoline futures, like they're dominantly on the CME, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and ICE, which is their main competitor in commodities, has been trying for probably 20 years to break this monopoly and to get more and more volume to move over to ICE. And it hasn't worked that well. So CME is still like very dominant in that one. But then conversely, ICE is really dominant in Brent oil futures, which is one of the two varietals of crude oil. And CME has been trying to compete there, and they have not succeeded either. So I mean, it's kind of like an extended analogy, but as David's talking about, building trading infrastructure and trying to win the like fundamentally what it comes down to is like where for a given asset is its home base, and then once that the liquidity sort of crystallizes there, that it kind of stays there. And I think the game for different exchanges is basically to go to new markets and help establish new things that are not traded on chain. That's really a significant driver of the liquidity of a particular ecosystem. So, and then the other thing is like it's quite an interesting situation because although there are a lot of fast finality chains, Ethereum itself is very slow finality. Ethereum's like 12 to 18 minutes. So you can be building a really performant layer one, but people still have a bad bridging experience bridging to that layer one, because if they're bridging from Ethereum and, layer zero is being very rigorous about not relaying that message until it's finalized on Ethereum. So people have this perception that, oh, bridging is slow to Aptos or Monad or whatever, but it's actually just because Ethereum's finality is slow. So to your point earlier about moats and, are we building them intentionally or do they just exist because of the way things work? Ethereum, ironically, has kind of a moat from the fact that it's so slow to bridge out of it that people probably are disincentivized from doing that. So the technology improvements that Ethereum is potentially making to make finality faster, on the one hand, that's, strengthening the competitive advantage, but on the other hand, it's actually letting down the moat a little bit. So I think that, the next couple of years will be really interesting to see what happens as Ethereum gets better, because it does mean that potentially some of the liquidity aggregation that's all happening on Ethereum could end up changing. That landscape could change.
Maybe kind of on that point, though, and you talked about CME and ICE, which I think is actually a very interesting analogy, because we've started to see also, and this is not a new topic, but a continued rise in app chains where people are, okay, maybe it's not a specific asset, but it's a specific type of trading, right? So Hyperliquid was brought up earlier. Okay, we do perpetuals here, maybe we'll do spot, but, Unichain obviously is launched recently. How do you think about, and maybe Dane, I'll start with you because you're obviously doing a lot of the connective tissue here. Like, what is the future of this fragmentation of these different types of app chains? How do you bring them back into the fold, or do you need to, versus, general purpose L1s that are, doing different things? Just like, what is the future supposed to look like, and what's missing to really connect those different chains?
I mean, for us, like, and this maybe gets to like my hot take later, which I won't reveal, and maybe it's not that hot, but like, as long as it's an EVM app chain, like we can deploy there right away. That's like kind of our bread and butter, and very easy to do. So we can kind of connect it into the larger fabric, you could say, I guess, of the mesh to mesh network that we have. Like I think that there is some interesting things like what's happening with the super chain where like you can kind of reliably say within a single confirmation that like the state's not going to change, and so we're able to actually bridge very, very quickly between the super chains. So obviously, like if you're launching an app chain on the OP stack versus other stacks, like maybe there's some potential benefits depending on what stack you're doing it on. But for us, we can connect anything right away. I think obviously it's more of a question of like, what is like how much demand is there actually for these chains, and like what kind of activity are they going to be driving, right? And why am I going to do something on an app chain versus something else, even if there is really low latency to bridge over or do things over there. To your point earlier, maybe if we can abstract everything away from the user, then maybe it's all happening under the hood and they just never even think about it, and all the liquidity is on a certain app chain or something. But yeah, I think that's how we think about it.
But most app chains right now are OP stack. Is that accurate?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, I guess
I think Arbitrum Orbit chains were OP stack, I would say. But there's
excuse me, sorry. I screwed up. So what I meant to say is like most app chains are optimistic rollups. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I feel like there's an interesting dynamic here where bridging, like optimistic rollups, basically to bridge back is very, very slow. Like if you actually like rigorously move the assets back using the L1 bridge contract, 7 days or 14 days or what have you, and maybe like fast like market makers can sort of like bridge that gap as a liquidity bridge, but that requires actual liquidity on there. So I think my thought on the app chain sort of fragmentation thing is that it can be difficult for these app chains to get sufficient liquidity because of this 7-day like transport back. Like if I told you, you Rob, you live in New York and you come and visit Dubai, but you're forced, if you want to come back from Dubai to New York, it's going to take you 7 days to get back. You're going to be less willing to come to Dubai.
I don't think I'd be here.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that we see with that though is like, which is kind of an interesting dynamic with these L2s, is like the official bridges are actually being used less and less. It's obviously the most secure way to do it, but like with layer 0, basically the way it works is that you configure as the asset issuer, the owner of the asset contract, you're actually choosing how many confirmations you want on the source chain. And so if you're bridging out of Optimism or some other optimistic rollup, you as the asset issuer are actually saying, like, in most cases, they're actually saying like, oh, we only want 10 confirmations to be able to bridge out. Now, obviously that has some risk, right? If there's some sort of like state change or reorg or whatever. But like all the assets on layer 0, even you could use the native bridge to bridge them out. Nobody's actually doing that. So yeah.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
And going back to the user experience and the future kind of AI agent experience, where you have 10, 100, 1000x usage of blockchain is going to be done by AI agents, the AI agents are going to care about execution quality. So I know last year everyone's all about modular this, modular that, let's have this L2. But layer 0, you guys know the complexity of having bridges from an L1 to an L2 or L2 to L2. It's super complex, and it's not friendly for execution quality for AI, who is going to want to switch back and forth and find the best yield, the best arbitrage, because you can't even wait a couple blocks, which is like a couple seconds or a minute, let alone days, for you be able to, an AI agent able to bridge asset from one place to the other. And that's why I think that most people on stage, including Aptos, Supra, I think we're all on the scale, the L1 side, right? And there's a lot of efficiencies that AI agents and users will experience when we all operate on these high throughput L1s, because you can be able to bridge assets seamlessly. And so I think that's definitely the future. And hopefully, going forward, we can kind of put this modular thesis, to bed.
Does everyone agree? Is the modular thesis going away?
I think there's some interesting things going on with based rollups. Um,
Agreed.
one really interesting thing about Monad with uh, 500 millisecond block times and fast finality, you can actually build a based rollup on Monad, use Monad for all of the sequencing, but then do execution in the separate environment. I think that a lot of basically there's this group of people that are working on based rollups on Ethereum, but they're fundamentally blocked by the fact that Ethereum block times are 12 seconds and finality is 12 to 18 minutes. And, we're working to scale the Ethereum L1, but actually a lot of the work that's being done can apply in another environment. So, yeah, I think that there's definitely potential for separate execution environments that just use an L1 for sequencing and data availability, and that's a very reasonable approach. The other thing you see is people starting to do this on Solana. There's a project called Magic Block, which is basically building. They call them like what a network extension, something like that. But
They're L2s.
it's basically an L2, and it's
I
like
hope Kyle doesn't kill me.
yeah, if ephemeral roll up using Solana as a sequencer, kind of the same idea.
That's actually really interesting. I've been following a lot of the base rollup stuff, and I think it's awesome. I had never actually thought about it on something other than Ethereum. So yeah, think about it on Monad. That's super cool and interesting.
Yeah, it solves a lot of because right now a lot of the tricky things are like figuring out the pre-confirmations and basically assume that there's only a couple of block builders in Ethereum, which conveniently there are, so that's okay. So you can get pre-confirmations by exploiting that factor. But yeah, with a faster finality consensus mechanism and faster block times, you can actually just address the problem in a different way.
I think there's going to be some interesting tension between complex cryptographic operations that may not necessarily make sense to be executed inside of a general purpose blockchain. And so we've already seen some projects actually shipping those out to TEs or MPC services. And then you can also see potential opportunities for, control. How do I control my ETH or my BTC from within inside of my super chain? And we can also see folks building inside of that space. And so modularity, I think, changes its narrative over time, and you might not necessarily see these more pure type of chains, but more how do we take where there are performance gaps in the existing layer ones and supplement those with this technology, and then over time it probably will converge. But that's an interesting experience that we're going to all go through.
In a world where blockchain, like we like Aptos is all-purpose chain, Ethereum, Monad, Supra. But in blockchain, we're all dealing with value. We're all dealing with aspects of DeFi. So this idea that we can have these modular chains, I think it really all comes down to having the best execution quality. And how do you do that? And from Supra's perspective, it's to actually be like a mega monolith, a supra monolith, where you have and you vertically integrate Oracle services, cross-chain communication, as well as automation to have the best execution quality for users. But really, we're talking also about the future of AI agents. To be able to craft complex transactions in one single block is what AI will want to do. AI agents will want to be able to execute things at the highest quality. And, having L2 over here, just for the sake of scalability, just really doesn't make sense in our view. I think it's really about how you can maximize execution quality and create the best trading experience and space for AI agents. And I think that's kind of Supra's point of view.
All right, so maybe a time for two more questions or so. Maybe Dave, I'll start with you. What part of the infrastructure stack do you think has been most underdeveloped or underinvested in crypto? And where do you want to see that going?
I think today, when we imagine, 1 million or 1 billion users coming into crypto, it's still not going to happen. The technology, the experience, it's a mess. And I think we just need to continuously figure out what we can do to help, businesses and developers coming into, crypto to figure out how they can build their products to really engage with the broader community, and whatever technology that, whether it be the layer one, the wallet infrastructures, the custodians can do to seamlessly enable more and more, regular users, your mom and pops getting into the space. That's the biggest gap.
Yeah, I still think wallets are just awful. Like they're honestly so bad. It's I don't know. I was trying to show my dad how to use crypto the other day, and I was like, oh yeah, there's like Ethereum, there's Optimism, Arbitrum, and your Ledger Live, but you can also use it in the extension. It's just a mess. And then I think like on the developer side, just like tooling, like I think the Ethereum ecosystem just has such strong tooling, and like playing with other VMs, you just quickly realize like, oh wow, there's like a long way to go for the tooling to catch up to the level it's at for the VM.
I would just say, for many of the DeFi applications existing on different chains, I think one thing to solve is helping them at the infrastructure layer to create more healthy revenue models. That's something we are working on in Supra, because we vertically integrate Oracle cross-chain communication as well as automation, and we're actually creating automation revenue that can come from automation to help give a kickback to the applications that run on Supra. So, we all of our chains will have MEV, but at Supra, what we're trying to do is prevent what's called toxic MEV. And a lot of times node operators are involved in MEV, and this is a revenue model for node operators. But at Supra, we're creating revenue models using automation, and in order to give that a kickback to the node operators and also the dApps that run on Supra. So I think revenue models in general for layer ones, like it's a touchy topic, because we all know that it's a race to the bottom for transaction speed and cost. So really, are we going to make revenue through transactions alone? No. And so we're definitely working on different revenue models at Supra, and also figuring out how to give kickbacks to the applications running on Supra, as well as to the node operators, because we are preventing toxic MEV.
Yeah, I would echo what Dane said, that basically right now when you're using a crypto wallet, you need to have a mental model in your head of what is actually going on behind the scenes. So you need to know, like, okay, yeah, I have my private key that's in my wallet, and like when I sign something, I'm making an authorization, but if I'm not sure what kind of message I'm signing, I might actually be signing away like everything that's in my wallet. And I think that if you like look at Web 2, it's pretty clear. People understand, like, I'm making a payment when I enter my credit card number and I click like authorize payment. So there needs to be some like better user interface that maybe almost makes it like harder to spend, but is very clear like what the contract is when I do make an expenditure. That's just kind of like off the top of my head. Like, you need to know, like, yes, I'm paying right now, but when I'm doing these other clicks, I'm not paying.
Back in the NFT days, and hopefully that comes back, there was a browser extension for MetaMask. I think it was called Fire. But basically, when you basically click on a smart contract on MetaMask, it would basically tell you, and it would run the smart contract logic and let you know what's happening before you executed the transaction. I thought that was really great user experience. I think all wallets should definitely have that.
All right, so last question, and I want to end with this. Maybe Keone, we'll start with you. What is your most controversial take on where high performance L1s and L1 infra is going?
Yeah, there's been a move over the past year or so, maybe 6 months, I don't know what it is, but everyone's building like data center chains and highly centralized systems, and then saying like you need this in order to deliver performance. So my hot take is that you can have both. You can have both decentralization and performance.
Mine is probably like, I think there's only room for so many VMs, and I think we're already kind of at the threshold for that. Like EVM is obviously the Schelling point. SVM has broken through. Like I think Move would probably be like on the third, right? But even there seems to be some divergence between Aptos and Sui. And then like what is fourth and fifth. And like, I just, you know, even if somebody wanted to build a wallet extension that you're talking about, right, they would need to support like 4 or 5 different contract languages at this point to be able to do that properly, and just extremely hard. So I think that we're going to see maybe 3 or 4 succeed, and then there'll be some number of chains associated with each.
So I stated my hot take already, and it's that we can put this modular thesis to bed. And yeah, I believe that the future of AI agents and users will want to operate in the place that has the best execution quality. And in order to do that, you need to have a fully vertically integrated L1 with native oracles. And that's the hot take.
I don't think general purpose blockchains really scale, and they're already hitting their limits. We look at Hyperliquid, we look at what they can do in that space. We think about what we could do on Aptos, and you imagine, 1,000 or 1,000,000 transactions all going to the same swap, the same LP, and you realize they all have to be executed sequentially in a general purpose blockchain. The only way to make that actually scale is by building, the smarts inside of the chain itself, giving native components that can read all these transactions, make sense of it, and really provide that massive parallelization that we've all been dreaming about. And so we need to move away from thinking we can all do this at that high level perspective and actually start changing the core of the blockchain to take advantage of the applications that we want to see in that space.
Awesome. Well, we'll end it there. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. And thanks everyone for being here.